Y'all remember this video that I did about 4 years ago? Well, Baldur's Gate 3 has shown me how right I was. It also gave me a few very pleasant surprises and ensured a bout of deep depression after I realized what it all means.
I am Raziel.
Now, if you're unfamiliar with what's been going on with Baldur's Gate 3 and the current controversy about it, let me fill you in. Essentially, Baldur's Gate 3 has been receiving tremendous support and praise from all over the internet by, its fans and the player base as a whole on Metacritic, which, Metacritic should always be taken with a grain of salt, on Steam itself, and various other locations all over the internet. But there is really only one demographic that has been speaking negatively about the game. And who is it? Other AAA game developers. That's right. Other devs from other companies have been shitting on Larian Studios and their game. Devs at companies such as Activision Blizzard, Insomniac Games, Obsidian Games, etc. These are some pretty big and very loaded companies. Repeatedly calling it an exception or an anomaly, and that they shouldn't be held to the same standards which this game has set, which roughly, in my opinion, translates to, we're lazy fucks and our shareholders make all our decisions, so we can't be held to the same standards. I mean, that's pathetic. And exactly what I expect from companies like this. A lot of these companies, especially ones like Activision Blizzard, have way more resources than Lariat Studios could ever hope to have to make a game. And the fact that they're saying this is a standard that we shouldn't be held to is absolutely ridiculous. But here's where my take will veer off probably a bit from a lot of the other YouTubers that have been covering what's been going on. Now, don't get me wrong, Baldur's Gate 3 is an amazing game. It's really good, but it isn't causing this issue and this response because of the reasons you may think. My first experience, for example, with this franchise was Baldur's Gate 1 when I was like 15 years old, and that game kicked the shit out of me, like literally put me in my place.
No! We're gonna accidentally! It's time to play. For real. No! Now that's a pro gamer move.
I did eventually beat that game, and it was a really good game. I had a very fun time playing a game, and it was my first real experience with an RPG that really focused on D&D type mechanics and, the atmosphere, the Sword Coast and all that, Forgotten Realms. Now, I didn't play the second one in the series, and to be honest, when the first pre-release client for Baldur's Gate 3 released, I did play it, and I played it on stream, and it didn't really catch me. I didn't really enjoy the game that much. So I put it to the side. Now, when I played it again at official launch, I saw a huge difference. The amount of changes they did with just 2.5 years of development was pretty amazing. And I'm really enjoying the game now. I'm having quite a fun time playing the game. How couldn't you? You can literally, fuck a bear in this game if you want to. If that's your thing. The issue here is, and my big point that I'm trying to make with this video, is Baldur's Gate 3 hasn't revolutionized the RPG genre or anything else for that matter. There aren't any features that break new ground and have never been seen before in any RPG or any game before it. It's really just a vastly improved, mechanically speaking, of course, version of Baldur's Gate 1 or 2 or any other game in this genre or style, any other RPG in this style. It's an improved and better game that way, right? But it isn't revolutionary by, as far as I can tell. This bar that all these crooked criminal AAA game developers are complaining about and saying is unreasonable to be held to was already set this high back in the 90s, late 90s, and early 2000s. It's where gaming was back then. And till about 15, 20 years ago, it was dropped to the floor consistently over time. Lariat and Baldur's Gate 3 simply followed the old formula of how gaming used to be, and by doing so, they simply did the following. They tested long enough and properly. They took feedback and acted on said feedback appropriately. They released a relatively bug-free and extremely polished and very well optimized final product. Don't require an internet connection to play the game on your own. And above all, have no microtransactions at all, or whether they be cosmetic or pay to win or anything in this fucking game. There are no microtransactions in Baldur's Gate 3. And that's the real sin here, isn't it? That last point alone instantly dispelled the large fart cloud that the AAA game industry has had us in for almost 2 decades now, where they stated games are getting so expensive. To make that, they need season passes, they need, they need cosmetics, they need tokens and other bullshit microtransactions to make the game even possible to be created, which now we know is complete bullshit. We always knew it. We always knew they were lying. They're exposed now, and they can't stand it. Most games these days made by AAA companies aren't even video games. They're cash shops and gambling simulators with shitty, unpolished, unoptimized, unfinished copy pasta games programmed around the cash shops to justify the existence of said cash shop. Does that make sense? Baldur's Gate 3 didn't create a new bar of expectation that the game development industry as a whole isn't sure they can reach now. It's a great game, but Baldur's Gate 3 isn't revolutionary. It simply put the bar back where it fucking was 20 years ago, and the rest of the industry doesn't want to do any actual work. They want to continue to collect money hand over fist by releasing half-assed, shitty products and nickel and diming their player base with, shitty cosmetic microtransactions with very little effort put in on their end. They've been coasting easy for a long time. They know most gamers that are around now and buy most of their games have, abused spouse levels of Stockholm Syndrome when it comes to their game releases at this point. They are so used to seeing us eat shit that they dish up on our plate. But Baldur's Gate 3 and Lariat Games showed us how things used to be and how they still should be. We deserve better, and Lariat knew it and showed us where our standards should be when it comes to titles coming from AAA game industries, especially if they're using an IP that's beloved and has a huge history behind it, like Baldur's Gate, Diablo, Warcraft, Destiny, Halo. In the end, we know that the vast majority of people that make big decisions at game companies look like this and not like this. And Lariat Games showed us in a way that there's still hope for the future. Now, where it made me quite a bit depressed is to see the reality that in this day and age, a game can qualify and is being shouted at the top of the roofs as being potentially Game of the Year simply on the grounds that it's not buggy, it functions at launch, doesn't crash all the time, has a decent and coherent storyline, and good gameplay, which is what every game that's considered great and a legacy at this point was, back in the 90s and early 2000s. That's kind of depressing. It puts a mirror up and shows how abused as gamers we've been for this many years. We need to hold the AAA companies to higher standards. Obviously, indie companies and, companies that have a team of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people, they're not going to be able to produce this level of polish and this level of optimization in a game. And I don't think anyone really holds these smaller companies to this standard because we understand they're a small indie company. So from them, we look for more like interesting innovation in certain qualities in game design and, mechanics that they're using that are unique, or maybe a callback to the nostalgia of an older game. I don't think they've ever been held to this standard AAA has. And to be honest, that's fine. But AAA needs to be held to the standard they were held to back when they made good games. They need to make it or fail based off of their products at the end of the day. Anyway, guys, what are your thoughts down below? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? If you like my content, give me a good thumbs up. That really does help this ass of an algorithm. If you don't like my content, that's great too. Thumbs down, go fuck yourself. I don't care. Anyway, guys, it's been Raziel. I am still streaming. My stream schedule is now officially up here on my YouTube channel. You can watch it over on Twitch and catch me and shoot the shit. Anyway, guys, keep it real.